You are listening to the CPA Moms podcast with Dawn Goldberg, CPA. This is episode number 332, Why You Should Practice New Thoughts and How to Do It. Welcome to the CPA Moms podcast, the podcast where busy female accountants who also happen to be moms like you get practical support and solutions you need to have it all, a successful career and a happy family. If you are looking for the solution to overwhelm and mom guilt, if you'd like to feel better and have more balance, as well as learn how to take back control of your life, you've come to the right place. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to this week's show. As always, I hope you had a great week. So I'm going to be honest, my week was a little rough. I just started another round of chemo, and this is a completely different chemo medication, and it hit me. It hit me like a ton of bricks. I think I have slept 20 out of 24 hours in the last 3 days, but today I finally feel a little bit better. So I gave myself some grace yesterday. I did not record the podcast on my usual day. I didn't release the podcast at the usual time. I just was like, you know what? I'm not on anybody's time clock. I am just going to allow myself to feel incrementally better. My son likes to say, you just want to measure your progress in inches. And today I feel an inch or two better. So that's why if you are used to me releasing the podcast at a certain time, that's why, because I just needed the break. But I'm feeling a little bit better today. So let's get started with this week's show. This is episode number 332, and the title is Why You Should Practice New Thoughts and How to Do It. So I love starting with a really great question for these episodes. So my question is, have you ever noticed how some thoughts just keep popping up even when you're not trying to think them? It's like they're just this automatic, like on autopilot. They're running quietly in the background while you just go about your day. And it's not just the good thoughts either. It's often the worries, the doubts, the fears, and those sneaky self-criticisms that feel like they've set up camp in our minds. Now, as moms, we juggle so much, and it can feel like our minds are always at full capacity. We've got thoughts about the kids, thoughts about work, about our relationships, and of course, that never-ending to-do list that we feel we should be doing better. And even if we try to focus on the positive, those familiar thoughts, they just stick around, don't they? I know I have experienced this so much lately. But here's the interesting part. Our brains are actually designed to hold on to those repeated thoughts. That's right. Our brains like to keep things simple and efficient, which means they don't mind replaying the same mental soundtrack over and over. Now, on the one hand, this can be helpful, right? Think about all the things that we do on autopilot, like driving to work, brushing our teeth, or cooking breakfast. We want those things to be on autopilot. We don't want to have to think about every little step because it frees up our mental energy for other things. But on the other hand, this tendency can also keep us stuck in patterns that aren't really serving us. It's like a playlist that we've outgrown, but we keep listening to anyway. I like to think of it like we're still listening to Barney the Purple Dinosaur songs in the car, even when our children are grown and out of the house. Those songs might have been helpful for a fussy toddler in the back seat, but they aren't serving us now. And so why is it so tough to change the way we think? If you've ever tried to just quote unquote, just think positively or just think in a more positive way or tell yourself something new and encouraging as if that was just going to flip a switch, you probably notice that it feels awkward, right? It's not just as simple as turning a knob. Our minds like to follow certain paths that they already know. They like what's familiar because they feel comfortable and safe. Even if, here's the most important thing, even if those paths aren't exactly helping us. It's kind of like trying to break in a new pair of shoes. At first, it's uncomfortable and clunky, but with time and with practice, they start to fit just right. And our thoughts are just like that. And the good news is that we can change our brain's way of doing things. We can create a new way of thinking and shift our focus towards things that empower us rather than hold us back. But it does, I'm going to be honest, it does take a little intention and a little bit of patience. And this is not about pretending that everything's perfect. That's not what I'm saying. Or forcing ourselves to believe something that feels far-fetched. It's more about gently guiding our minds towards thoughts that align with what we truly want for ourselves. So instead of letting our brains run on that same old playlist, that same old Barney the Purple Dinosaur playlist, we get to create one that lifts us up. So this week I'm going to discuss why our thoughts keep us stuck, and I'm going to talk about how to move toward new thoughts. So let's start with why our thoughts keep us stuck. Now, our brains are really interesting, and they're pretty funny because they love to stick with those familiar thoughts, again, even if they're not actually helping us. It's like walking the same path over and over just because that path is there, even when it leads to nowhere good. Most of what runs through our heads is just habit. And while habits can be useful, they can also keep us stuck in patterns that don't serve us without us realizing it. See, our brain is wired to filter out noise and to make things easier, but that efficiency can also be pretty limiting. For example, take those little background thoughts like, I'm never going to catch up, or I should be handling this better. These thoughts, they seem small. They seem like they wouldn't be a problem. But what happens is they shape how we see ourselves. And because they pop up automatically, typically without us even being aware of it, we don't always question them. Even thoughts that seem harmless, something like, oh, I just have to survive tax season. I hear this all the time with my clients, and I used to say this all the time. Thoughts like these can add up over time. Now, at first, they might seem practical, like I'm just stating a fact. I just have to survive tax season. But what happens is they can reinforce the idea that work is something to push through instead of something you can actually manage with more ease. Just the word survive seems very heavy, very dramatic. The truth is, trying to think differently can feel weird at first. It doesn't feel comfortable because the brain, again, loves its routines. It loves its habits of thought. So if you've always thought something like, I have to do everything myself, shifting to a new, better feeling thought like, I can set small boundaries, this might not feel natural right away. It might feel like you're telling a lie. That is just your brain clinging to what it knows. If you've practiced saying, I have to do everything myself, that is what's familiar to your brain, and that's what it wants to think, even though it's not helpful or useful. But here's the tricky part. Our old thoughts are often tied to emotions that feel familiar, even if they're not helpful. So if you're used to feeling stressed or used to feeling frustrated, your brain holds on to those feelings because they feel quote unquote normal. And that is why shifting to something more positive isn't just about thinking differently. It's about feeling differently. And that takes practice. But the good news is that you do not have to believe everything that your brain offers up. You do not have to believe every thought that your brain gives you. Because here's the most important thing I want you to walk away from this. Thoughts are just habits. They're not facts. Thoughts are optional. And once you start questioning them, you can replace them with ones that actually serve you. Now, I'll be honest, it won't happen overnight. It does take a little patience, a little curiosity, maybe a little awareness, but you can break free from the thoughts that keep you stuck, and you absolutely can create ones that help you move forward. Okay, so now that you've got an idea of why our minds cling to the same old thoughts over and over again, I want to get into some practical steps for creating new thoughts. Now, the goal isn't to instantly, again, flip a switch and feel positive all the time. You don't want to be robotic. No one can do that. But instead, it's about gradually shifting in a way that feels more natural, feels more realistic for you. So here's a simple step-by-step process to start moving towards new, empowering thoughts. And I'm going to also share some examples to make it all come together. Okay, step number 1, you want to notice your current thoughts. So for this step, I want you to start by becoming more aware of the thoughts that are running through your mind on a daily basis. You can try what I call a thought download. And this is just simply taking a few minutes to write down everything that is on your mind without judging or filtering it. You do not want to be judgmental about what you notice that you're thinking or what you write down what you're thinking. You just want to think of this as dumping the contents of your mental junk drawer out in front of you on paper. For example, let's say that you're feeling overwhelmed with work and with family commitments. Your thought download might include things like, I'm so behind, or I can't keep up, or there's just too much to do. The thing is, seeing these thoughts on paper, again, they're just thoughts, they're not facts. Seeing these thoughts on paper can help you identify patterns and beliefs that are influencing your feelings and your actions. Okay, so step number 1 was notice your current thoughts. Step number 2, choose a new thought that feels believable. So for this one, you want to take a look at your thought download where you just jotted down. I like to just spend maybe 5-10 minutes at most, just jotting down, just emptying my brain onto paper. You want to look over that thought download and you want to pay attention and pick one recurring thought that you would like to change. Now, the goal isn't to jump to an overly positive thought, an overly positive statement that feels unrealistic. But instead, you want to find a thought that feels a little bit better, that feels like a small positive shift, a statement that you can actually believe. For example, let's say your thought download included a thought like, I am so behind. Well, going straight to, oh, don't worry about it, like I'm on top of everything, that's going to feel fake. It's going to feel forced, and there's no need to jump that far. A more believable thought could be, I'm doing my best with what I have right now. Now just listen to that. I'm doing my best with what I have right now. This is just a gentle, encouraging step up from the original thought, I'm so behind. And it is likely something that you can genuinely accept. You want to make sure that you choose a new thought that feels believable, but also feels a little bit better than the unhelpful thought from your thought download. Okay, now step 3, you want to practice your new thought regularly. And once you have that new thought that feels believable, you want to make a plan to practice it. Just because you've chosen this thought doesn't mean that it's now wired in your brain. This could mean setting reminders on your phone. It could be writing it on sticky notes. It could be repeating it to yourself during moments of quiet, like brushing your teeth or getting ready in the morning. Practicing this new believable thought consistently, this is what will help it to start feel much more natural. Because once you've practiced that new thought and you're starting to let go of that old unhelpful thought, your brain is going to get on board with that new thought. For example, if you chose, I'm doing my best with what I have right now, you might repeat it each time that you start to feel overwhelmed. You might want to, what I like to do is put it on a Post-it note if I'm trying to practice a new thought. I'll put it on a Post-it note so that when I'm feeling overwhelmed, I look over, I repeat that new thought, and I start to train my brain to think that new thought. You could even set a reminder on your phone to pop up every few hours with this new believable thought, and this will help you to reinforce it as you go through your day. When I'm trying to practice a new helpful thought, sometimes I'll just set my alarm to go off like every hour or two, and it's just a real quick reminder to practice that new thought. Consistency is key. Okay, and then step number 4 is to gradually build on your new thought. So as your initial thought starts to feel more comfortable, it starts to feel more familiar because you're starting to practice it, you can gradually build on it. You can gradually build layers that bring you closer to the belief that you ultimately want. So you can think of this, the analogy I like to use is taking small steps up a ladder rather than trying to leap from the bottom of a ladder all the way to the top. For example, after practicing the thought, I'm doing my best with what I have right now, you might feel ready to shift to, I'm finding ways to get things done more efficiently. Right? So the original unhelpful thought was, I'm so behind. But now you practiced, I'm doing my best with what I have right now. Now that's starting to feel more familiar. It's starting to feel more comfortable. And once you've practiced that enough, now you're ready to move even further up the ladder to, I'm finding ways to get things done more efficiently. And eventually, who knows, you might move to, I'm capable of managing my time effectively. Right? Each step, each gradual step up that ladder is a gentle progression. It's a gentle progression towards a more empowering belief. So the bottom line that I want you to know is that shifting our thoughts takes a bit of time, and it definitely takes some persistence. But I promise you that these small steps can make it very, very manageable. This will not take you a lot of time. And over time, each tiny change that you make in your thoughts, it adds up to a noticeable shift in how you feel and how you approach challenges. So the idea isn't to force ourselves to think positively all the time. Again, I don't want you to turn into a robot. The idea is to gently guide our minds towards thoughts that lift us up and that help us grow. So instead of defaulting to, I'm never going to catch up on everything, what if you chose to practice, I can focus on one thing at a time and still make progress? Right? If that's a believable thought, I can focus on one thing at a time and still make progress. That small shift can change how you approach your workday and how much you get done in less time. So as you go forward, after you listen to this podcast, I want you to remember to be gentle with yourself. I don't want you to think that you have to scrub your brain clean and then all of a sudden you're going to be thinking these amazing thoughts. I want you to start small and choose thoughts that feel believable, and then give yourself the grace to grow at your own pace. Because these little mental shifts, I'm telling you, they can lead to really big changes over time. Because they're going to help you to create a mindset that supports your goals, that supports your happiness, and supports the life that you truly want to build. So let me just leave you with this. You've got everything you need to get there. Just do it one thought at a time. Okay, so now I want to share 3 questions that you can ask yourself to apply what you learned in this episode. The first question is, what is a thought that I keep coming back to, and how does it make me feel? So sometimes we don't even realize how often we're thinking the same thoughts. I noticed this was years ago, but I noticed this when I kept saying, tax season is stressful, tax season is stressful. And then I worked with a coach and she's like, you realize that's a thought, that's not a fact. And that just changed the trajectory of my career and of my life. So for you, maybe it's a thought like, I'll never catch up, or I'm always tired. By identifying an unhelpful thought and recognizing the feeling that it brings up, like stress or worry or frustration, you're going to see how these thoughts shape your daily experience. It's so empowering to see, what are these thoughts that I have been thinking over and over again that are not helpful or useful? Okay, question number 2. What's a small shift that I could make in this thought to feel a little more empowered? Now, often the goal isn't to completely change your thought in one go. Like, that's kind of difficult to do because it's often been practiced and it's not believable yet. But to make a small, realistic, believable shift that brings a bit more peace or encouragement, that is empowering. And so this question, what's a small shift I can make in this thought to feel a little bit more empowered? This will help you to reframe your thoughts in a way that feels doable rather than forced or rather than unnatural. And it will allow you to gradually move towards more positive beliefs. And the third and final question is, what is a thought I want to practice daily, and how can I remind myself of it? Now, creating a new thought, as I've said throughout this whole podcast, it takes repetition and it takes reinforcement. Choosing a thought to practice each day is going to keep your focus on the change that you want to make. And finding ways to remind yourself just ensures that it doesn't get lost in the busyness of daily life. All right, my friends, that was episode number 332. The title is Why You Should Practice New Thoughts and How to Do It. This is probably the most powerful work that I've done in so many areas of my life, but especially, like I shared before, especially when it came to tax season. I was on rinse and repeat with tax season is stressful. I've shared this before. My children would walk around saying, tax season is stressful, tax season is stressful. But when I worked with that coach who showed me that that was a thought, that it wasn't a fact, and that thought was optional, at first I was like, yeah, I don't think so. You're not an accountant. You have no idea what you're talking about. But once I really did take in what she was saying, I'm like, okay, tax season is stressful, causes me to feel stressed and overwhelmed, and that's not going to help me get my work done. So what is a new thought that I could think that is believable that I could start practicing and replacing that old unhelpful thought? And so I think the first year that I started doing this, I started catching myself saying tax season is stressful. And I started thinking, maybe it doesn't need to be so stressful. I did believe that. I was like, I don't know that it needs to be as stressful as I've made it out to be. And once I practiced, maybe it doesn't have to be as stressful as I've made it out to be. Once I've practiced that thought, then I was ready for more empowering thoughts, one thought after another. And I kept climbing up that ladder. And now tax season is not stressful for me. And I get more done in less time than I could have ever done before. And that is because I have rewired my brain. So why should you practice new thoughts? Because if your old thoughts aren't working for you, and most of the thoughts that we think that our brain thinks on an autopilot, most of them are not working for us, but you have control. Practice new thoughts and everything changes. I'm telling you, it is absolutely amazing. All right, my friends, have a fantastic week, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for joining me today. If you like what you heard, be sure to click subscribe on your podcast app so you never miss an episode. At CPA Moms, we pride ourselves on being the e-harmony of the accounting world, making it possible for business owners to have their accounting needs met by amazing CPAs that are moms just like you. Whether you are an accountant interested in growing your own solo mompreneur business, or perhaps you are looking for flexibility to work from home, or maybe you are looking to grow your current firm or team, CPA Moms has what you are looking for. Check us out at cpa-moms.com.